Shabbat Shalom, everybody, and you are welcome to this Shabbat, the Shabbat of the festival of Sukkot. You know, it was wonderful that this week, right? We were on, that was on what? On Monday or Tuesday? On Tuesday?
Sunday.
On Sunday, we built the sukkah. You know, it was beautiful. You know, we did a very good job. You know, and we glorified the name of the Lord, and we sanctified the sukkah on Monday, as that was the Erev Sukkot, and it has been today is the 5th day of Sukkah. Remember, it's going to be a 7-day period. It's a 7-day festival to Adonai our God, and on this festival, God said we have to be joyous. It is a must that you have to be happy. You must be happy. You know, so God is telling us that on our festival of Sukkot, we have to be very, very happy. So we give Him all the glory for giving us the life to be able to reach the festival of Sukkot. So it is, we bless Him and we thank Him for that. So this morning, we are going to discuss about the festival of Sukkot. What does it mean? And I would like us to go a little bit deeper, right? To see the spiritual implication, the spiritual teaching that God, the Almighty, our Father, blessed be He, is telling us. The God of our father, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, is teaching us, literally teaching us something about the festival of Sukkot. He wants us to see. He wants us to not to have a narrow mind, you know, but he wants us to have a broad view, a broad vision, to understand from God's perspective that, listen, this is what I am teaching you. This is what I want you to understand. This is what I want you to see. Not just to sit down in the sukkah, eat, and get yourself fat like a cat and go back and be doing your sin. No, return back to your iniquity or return back to your sin. God is telling us that is not my intention. That is not the intention of me giving you the festival of Sukkot. But this is the main reason why I am giving you this festival, for you to understand, for you to remember what I did for you when I lead you from Egypt into the promised land. Remember, this festival is a symbolic teaching, and we are going to break down those symbolism, so I can be able to, we break them down and come and we are going to rearrange them again and make them whole. Okay? Alright, so I subtitle the topic of this morning, I would say lesson would be, what does Sukkah represent? What does it represent? That Sukkah that we build, what does it represent? Actually, it represents the life of a man. Sukkah represents the life of a man. And that is what God wants us to understand, the spiritual implication of it. That's the reason why God said it's a 7-day festival. Right? We do what? We build it, right? We build the Sukkah. And then on the 7th day, when everything is done, we do what? We pull it down. Right? We remove it. Next year, right? And we build it again, then we pull it down. So God is giving us this understanding that the sukkah is not what? It's not permanent. It's not a permanent structure. And if we look at our life, a man is born one day, a woman is born one day, and one day he died, or she died. So God is trying to give us, and this word, it's like what? It's like God is leading us. This word is like a Misraim, the word of sin, the word of iniquity, the word of injustice, the word of where there is no balance. And God is saying, okay, I'm going to lead you from this word, and as I lead you, I'm going to lead you through the path of justice into the word, into the world to come. So that promised land that, you know, Israel left Egypt, right? And the world, so Egypt is like this world, and God led them through the wilderness into the promised land, into the promised land. So the life that we live, if we live justly, we live rightly, that life that we live will lead us into the world to come. So the world to come is that promised land. The world to come. That is Garden Eden. Remember, man was sent out of the Garden of Eden. He was rejected and sent out into the world. And God, but remember that the Garden of Eden is the house or the home of a man. That is the permanent home of a man. Here is a temporal home. This world that we're living in is a temporal place. It's not a permanent place. So, through our journey on this in this physical world, this physical world that we live, will lead us into that Garden of Eden, the spiritual home of a man. So we have to return back to the Garden of Eden. God said, I will bring you back. God will bring us back to the Garden of Eden. But we have to face the consequence of what we did. Everybody has to face the consequence of their action for what they did in this world. So this is what God is telling us individually and collectively. He's telling us that Sukkah is a temporary home. We are living here temporarily. It's not a permanent home. A man born, grow, successful, big, do everything, but one day he perish or he die. Right? And what he or she did during their lifetime will be what their name will be known for after they have passed away. And that will lead you into the Garden of Eden or into another place, a place of what? Of torment. So it's a choice. Okay? So let's go ahead. The offering of Sukkot is unique in three ways. First, they include a total of 70 bulls to invoke protection for the 70 Gentile nations. Secondly, the number of bulls are different for each days of the festival. And thirdly, there is a special water libation which were performed every morning at Sukkot. It is regarding Sukkot that the Torah instructs us to be joyful on your holiday. Now, joy, like almost all other emotions, is not something that can be turned on or off like a faucet. A man or a person feel joyful or not. You cannot tell a person who is sad or depressed to just magically feel joyful and expect that should somehow happen. The rabbis have already remarked that since we have just passed through the cleansing processes of Rosh Hashanah, which is Yom Teruah and Yom HaKippurim, and feel relief, forgiving, and confidence in our faith, and it is our relationship to our Creator. It is natural to expect that we will feel joyful at this time of the year. What am I saying with all these words? Well, I'm telling us that our rabbis, that they give us the understanding why the Torah asks us to be what? To be joyful on the festival of Sukkot. Remember, as I said, that joy is an emotion. You can't just turn it off and on. Say, you know what? God said I should be joyful. I just turn it on like a faucet. Like if water is running. No, it cannot be turned on or off. You cannot tell a person that is sad, a person that is depressed, a person that is mourning, or a person that have one problem or the other to just come and say, you know what? Oh, be joyful, and just turn it on and off. No, it is not possible that way. But what God is telling us here is that since we've just passed through the festival of Yom Teruah, and God has mercy upon us, God has forgiven us, the same thing will pass through the festival of Yom HaKippurim, and God has cleansed us from all our sin. We are naturally expected to be joyful, to be happy, to praise God, that God, thank you because you have forgiven me my sin, you have forgiven me my iniquity, you have cleansed me from all my unrighteousness. So with that, we become happy. we are joyous, we are renewed, we are like a young eagle, because our God has forgiven us and has cleansed us from all our sins. But to a certain extent, this type of answer really only begs the question. It is quite difficult for anyone to feel completely satisfied with oneself and one action after undergoing a thorough, honest, and often painful self-examination. We are now privy to our faults and falling, and even though we are confident that heaven's goodness has forgiven us, we are still well aware of the problem that remains within us and limits, if not even prevent any feeling of overwhelming joy to take hold. And yet, the Torah insists that we be joyful and of good cheer on this holiday of Sukkot. Yes, it is true. Because if we want to be really, really sincere with ourselves, right? If we want to really sincere with our actions, right? We did what is wrong, right? You did what is wrong, and God is telling us that for Him to forgive us our sin, we have to sincerely, deep in our heart, go back and make research of ourselves. And for a man to go in his heart, in his mind, to make to reflect, to make a reflection of his action. Of course, if you want to be sincere, it is very, very hard, right? It is not just a thing of who, ha. No, it is a thing that you can be sad. You can be sad about. You can say, oh, you know what? Did I actually did that? I can't believe that I can do this. So that kinds of thing bring a kind of sadness that I can't believe I can do this type of action. On my level spiritually, why should I fall to this? To this level. It is not me. Why? So such a self-reflect can bring a kind of sadness, into a man, because you never expect yourself to fall to such a low level. But notwithstanding, God is telling us that on this festival of Sukkot, we have to be happy. You have to completely, God has forgiven you, and you have to forgive yourself, right? Because sometimes it is very hard for a man to forgive himself or herself. It is extremely hard. Some people say, because I told us before that the enemy of a man is a man himself. You are the worst enemy of yourself. When God has forgiven you, you refuse to forgive yourself. You say, okay, sometimes, giving an example, a man went to go and do something bad, right? And he is caught in that action, right? And even though, let's say for example, the wife has forgiven him, or the children has forgiven him, or the community has forgiven him, he's still feeling guilty in his heart. He never forgive himself. Even though everybody has forgiven you, but you are seeing, so God is telling us in such a way, you cannot do that. You have to forgive yourself. You have to let it go. Let it go. Don't attach it on your back and have a hunchback. No, don't do that. God, the community, the people, your wife, your children, everybody has forgiven you. Forgive yourself. Yeah, but that internal remorse, that internal check will make you not to repeat it next time. So, but if you refuse to forgive yourself, right, that is a kind of a trick of the enemy to keep you down, to keep you not being joyful or being joyous, because the enemy want to deprive you of your joy. He want to make you to be down always in the spirit. And remember that our mind is a very powerful computer, extremely powerful one. Okay, that because when you are so down, another disease can be coming upon you, sicknesses and other kinds of evil things that the enemy can be adding, because you get yourself loose, your immune system become loose, everything become loose. and then you start having all kinds of sicknesses or all kind. You think, it's because I want to go and eat some food that is not good. Not only that, yes, that might contribute, but because you yourself is completely down in the spirit, you are negative in the spirit. You are down. You refuse to forgive yourself. But when you are joyous, when you forgive yourself, the community has forgiven you. Joy builds immune system. I'm telling you, when you are joyous, your body is healthy, strong. It is very hard for disease to attack you because here mentally you are strong. That is what God is trying to that's what I'm trying to let us understand through here. The sages have given a markedly different perspective to the emotion of joy. And it is this perspective that I feel the Torah is speaking of when commanding us regarding the holiday of Sukkot. The rabbis in the Talmud stated that there is no joy comparable to the joy one feels when doubt has been removed and clarity and reality reign. You see? This is the wisdom of our rabbis. This is the wisdom of our sages. He said, there is no joy comparable. There is no joy comparable to the joy a man feels when all doubt. You know the meaning of a doubt? When a doubt is when you don't know that this is it positive or negative. Or even though the Torah said the sin of a doubter is like the sin of a witchcraft. Can you imagine? You see the qualification in which the Torah qualified it. The Torah said the sin of a doubter is the same, is equal with the sin of a witchcraft, of an idolater, someone that worship idol, is the same equivalent. We have to understand this because these are the tricks in which the enemy used to keep you down in the spirit. He's not allowing you to move forward in the ladder of holiness, in the ladder of righteousness. You see, so you have to do what? Remove all doubt in your life. Your wife has forgiven you. Your husband has forgiven you. You have forgiven your children. Your children has forgiven you. The community has forgiven you. You have forgiven the community. Remove doubt. Take them away. Send them out. You don't need it. Rebuke them. Even though if the enemy wants to use that as a trick to trap you down, tell the enemy, the Lord rebuke you. Remove doubt. And then you can have a complete clarity and reality. You can be able to face the actual fact, the actual thing that the Holy One, blessed be He, is teaching you, is asking you, is commanding you to do. Because at this time now, you have removed all kinds of doubt out of your life. And when the Torah said march, you march. When the Torah said sit, you sit. When the Torah said stand, you stand. When God said give me this, you give. When God said take this and to that person, you take it and go to that person. But at this time, you are fine. That doubt is being removed. Right? I'll give us an example. Here, when the Holy One, blessed be He, command Abraham to go and sacrifice his son to make the Akedah of Yitzhak, right? The sages in the Talmud told us in the Midrashim that Abraham went to go and discuss with his friend, his loyal closest friend, and he told him, he said, listen, I have this revelation. And this is what the Holy One, blessed be He, is commanding me to do. His friend, his loyal friend, told him, and what do you want to do? He said, I'm still thinking over it. His loyal friend told him, what are you thinking over? You are thinking over what? Remember, this God that you talk about is the God that delivered you from the hand of Nimrod. This God that you told me is one that took you from your father's house and lead you to this land. This God that you're talking about is the one that delivered you from the hands of Pharaoh. This God that you're talking about is the one that delivered you from the hands of the 7 kings. And you defeated them and you take all kinds of spoils. This God that you're talking about is the God that prospers you and make you successful and make you rich. What are you thinking about? Go ahead and answer the call. With that, Abraham was completely convinced. Remember, we are human beings. Don't forget. We are what we have. God is giving us this understanding that with flesh, sometimes we doubt. We can doubt God because we are in the flesh. Okay? But God is giving us this divine understanding. Do not doubt. Once God has given you an instruction and you know it is the voice of God, go ahead. Don't stop. Go ahead with full speed and you will be successful. Abraham didn't think twice again. He packed his load, take the son, take his servant, and they went. See? Any doubt in the life of Abraham was resolved, was removed completely at that time with the communication with his friend. Because he said, oh, actually my friend was talking the truth. Or my friend is saying the truth. It's making sense. Because look at my life. I can go back and look. This is actually the fact. This God has delivered me and made me prosperous and made me successful. Why should I doubt him now? Everything he saved me from the midst of the fire, and the whole world saw that I am saved. Oh, no. I will go ahead and do exactly what he commanded me to do. And he did that, and God speaks, and God provides a ram instead of the son. So this is what God is giving us. This is what I want us to understand. Once we remove doubt is a disease. Doubt is a kind of a virus. When it enters your life, it enters like it does small tiny thing you don't know. It enters, and once it enters, it begins to duplicate. And not only duplicating, it destroys other cells. A strong man that has faith, a mighty man of faith, can fall in a second because of doubt. So God is asking us, do not doubt God. Do not doubt the Holy One of Israel. Blessed be He. He's telling us that it's nothing God cannot. That's why we cannot say God cannot do this. It's a sin. It is a sin for you to say that, because there's nothing God cannot do. He is God. He is God. He can do whatever He wants to do. He created the ends of the universe. He made everything, spiritual world and the physical world, are His own. He can do whatever He wants to do. He's God. But our job is to trust Him and believe Him and say that He is able to perform what He has spoken. You know? So, Sukkot can provide us with that clarity and perspective. It teaches us that our physical home and house is not quite as important as we may think of it. It instructs us that everything in this physical world is temporal, not permanent. And it also highlights us in the beauty of nature, the necessity for heaven's blessings of rain, productivity, and in the realization that even though our lives and existence are indeed fragile, we should treasure every breathing moment and see it in the perspective of our immortality and eternity. So, this is what Sukkot provides us with. Because many people might think, my greatest investment is what? Especially in North America, right? Their greatest investment in what? Their house. So, my home is my greatest investment. My house it cost me $20 million. My home is $50 million. My home is $100 million. If anything happens, I sell it. I can go and buy a small house or a small apartment, and the rest I can use it to, go for vacation, enjoy myself until I die. People think home is a what? It's an investment. But the Holy One is telling us, no. That is a false investment. That is a false reality. It's like a facade. It's a false facade that people put in their face. That $100 million home, that $200 million home that you think is your security. What if, God forbid, you are struck with a disease? Are you going to live in that house? No. Or you think, okay, it's my $200 million house. What in the second, God said, enough is enough, give me your life. You are not the owner of your life. You are not the giver. So God owns it. And God can request it at any time, right? Okay, I'm taking it. It's mine. What are they going to do? You see, so this false assurance that the enemies has put in our mind, God is telling us to remove it. Those are facade. They are false assurance. The actual assurance is that the Sukkot is teaching us that everything in life is what is temporal. Nothing is permanent. Nothing. Only the Holy One, blessed be He, is what is the truth. Is eternal truth. Is permanent. So, but once we put our hope in that truth that is eternal, then we also will be eternal, because we are putting our hope and our truth and our love in Him. We trust Him. We believe Him. We put our life literally in His hand. Say, God, this is my life. Take it. Do whatever He wants to do with it. It's yours. And you see, and God Himself, by His power and by His strength, begin to build you up, build us up gradually and individually. As a collectively, is begin to build us up. So I don't want us to have this false assurance that my home, my car. Some people, their car is their assurance. They have a car of 10 million. You know, they say, no, this car is Mustang 1945. You see, Mustang. You know the Mustang SS 500 1945. It's more expensive than the car of the president of the president of the United States. Why? Because they call it antique. You know, oh man, this car is 100 million, and people say, oh what, 1945? Yeah, 1945. Oh wow, because so it's one of a kind. No one owns it anymore in the world. It is only me. You see, so don't put your hope in that. You see, we have people that buy all those kind of expensive cars, those a very rare kind of car. They store it in their garage. They don't use it. They just put it down there in order for them to sell it whenever they're in need of money. No, don't put your hope in that. Don't put your hope in your wife. You know, some people, they dress their wife with them. I'm not saying it's bad for you to dress your wife or to make your wife look beautiful. No, but your wife you can have your wife today and tomorrow she's gone. I'm not saying that she might leave you alone and go and marry another man. No, because the life that your wife lives is not hers, it's God. So this is what I'm saying. The only person that we can put our hope in, the only being that we can put our hope in, is in our God, our Creator, the Holy One of Israel. Blessed be He. So Sukkot require within us the appreciation of correct priority in our lives and the achievement of a proper balance between illusion and reality. It provides us with the most necessary dose of humility, one that can allow a person to see things in a proper perspective. The Hebrew people throughout our long and many times difficult years and experiences have always realized that we are living in a what? In a sukkah. The world is a sukkah. You know, God doesn't want us to live this what do you call it? They call it illusion. Thank you. This world of illusion. You know, that is the world of what? The world of Babylon. Illusion. You are living in this illusion. In this they call it that's another name for no. They call it like something. Horoscope, something like that. I don't know, like horoscope. No, not horoscope. You know, these science things that you see somebody singing, but actually the person is not there. Hologram. Thank you. Hologram. Thank you. In the world of hologram, you see that is what illusion is. It's not reality. But you see the person. I have seen a place where they bring back Bob Marley. You see Bob Marley on the stage. You see Tupac on the stage. You see all those Elvis on the stage. Elvis is dead 20 years, 500, 1 million years ago. They can even bring back Abraham if they want, you know. But is it real? Go there and touch. Is what? It's just ordinary air. You see, hologram is a what? It's an illusion. It's not true. But for in your eyes, if you look, yeah, it's true. No, it's not true. It's not fact. So this is what I am saying, and this is what the festival of Sukkot is telling us, that this world is an illusion. Everything that is here is illusion. Nothing exists. It is fake. The real reality is in the spirit. The real reality is in the spirit. All this is just illusion to blindfold you. It's a facade. It blinds you. You cannot see further. But God is telling us, remove it so that you can see. This is what I am teaching you. I am teaching you this principle of sukkah, for you to see that this world is a sukkah. We live there temporarily. It's not permanent. Our permanent home is the Garden of Eden. That's where our home is. This one just to pass through. We pass through it just like the children of Israel passed through the wilderness. In this world, there are dangers. Right? There is a lot of pits, a lot of holes, a lot of serpents, a lot of scorpions. Who can help you to see them? Only God. Who can guide you through it? Only our Savior. And so that is why, as the Holy One of Israel, blessed be He, the God of our Father, guided the Israelites through the wilderness. There were scorpions, there were danger, there were all kinds of things. But God guided them all the way, directed them, and until they got into the promised land. The same thing God is want to do in our life. That is going to guide us. Just believe in Him, trust Him. Trust me, that's what God said. I will guide you through this physical world until I bring you back to the Garden of Eden. That is what He's doing in our life. So we have to understand this. The people of Israel, the Hebrew people, understand this principle very, very well. And they are extending this principle to the rest of the world for all to see that this thing that we are seeing is illusion. It's nothing real. Only God is real. Only God is the truth. Only God is real. The rest is an illusion. So God, see, it can be there today and tomorrow is no more. Right? That is it. That is life. You see, a man in the book of Psalms said a man is like a grass. It grows, it flourishes, and it's gone. Finished. That is the life of a man. So you might, these are my children, this is my wife. They are your children, they are your wife. But you think it is real? No. They can be here today and tomorrow they are no more. Where's the guarantee? The only guarantee is in our Redeemer, our God, who saved us, who protects us, who guides us, who gives us life. So that is the reality. And He is the only one that is real. The realization alone was sufficient to allow individual Israelites and the Hebrew society in general to function, survive, and even prosper by absorbing this lesson of the sukkah, its beauty, fragility, temporal nature, serenity, and relationship to the nature and the world we live in. We immerse ourselves in God's perspective, so to speak, of the world and our place in this world. We have to realize and understand our place in this world. You see, we have to realize and understand our place. Where do I belong to? Where do I belong in these chains of complexity? The world is a complex place. Where is my place in it? How can I contribute positively into it to enhance it more? And that is what God is calling us for. That we should be able to contribute positively to this world, not negatively, positively. And we, the Hebrew people, understood this principle from the beginning, because God Himself is teaching us, and we are seeing what God is telling us, that this world is a fragile thing. The planet is very fragile. The same thing, our life is fragile. Many people will say, "Oh, you know what? I'm a young man. You know, I'm 20 years old. I'm full of energy. I'm in my prime. I'm 40 years old. You know, a 40 years old man, that you are in your prime. I'm in my prime. You know, I can do what I'm strong. I can do." Oh, my friend, in a second, all those prime that I am talking about, this energy that I am talking about, might disappear. It's a fragile thing. We can see what is happening even though in the environment. When we misbalance the environment, in Europe there is no tornado, but every day now it's getting frequent every time. In Europe, tornado everywhere every time. You see, the hurricane were before small one, but now they're getting more stronger and more mightier. Every time volcano, boom, the volcano that be sleeping for 500 years, for 50 years, for 100 years, for 200 years. One day just wake up, boom. There is one that is happening now in Italy, right? In Spain, is it Spain? Sorry, in Spain. In Spain, yeah, in Spain. The one small island there. You see, this is what we are talking about. Look at the tsunami, the one that happened in Japan. The world is a fragile thing. If we do not, protect it, God has given man this world to protect it. We are the world, we are the caretaker, the husbandman of the planet. Take care of it, make it good, contribute to this planet positively. Do not destroy it. Why are you destroying it? Why do you want to destroy it? Are you not thinking about the generation to come? Your children's children? If your forefather destroy it, will you be alive? That is what we have to make sure that everything is fragile. It's a temporary thing, and we have to take care of it. That alone should awaken us, or should awaken within us, an emotion of joy and satisfaction. In the temple time, the libation of water on the holy altar of the temple in Jerusalem on the holy day of Sukkot created a national emotion of joy and rejoicing. It is interesting to note that water, which most of us take for granted in North America, you see, water, which most of us take for granted in North America, is not nearly as expensive a commodity as an animal's sacrifice or an offering of gold or silver would have been. But nevertheless, it was the offering of water that occasioned the great Jerusalem. You see, the simple water. Because the people there, they understand the enormosity of water, the greatness of water. Because without water, no life. Right? They understand that principle. Our fathers, they understood that very well. That they need rain, they need water for anything, for the success of their people, for their food, for their environment, for everything that will ever happen. They need water. For man himself to survive, you need water. Right? But here in North America, what do we do? My children, they'll stay there for 5 hours. I'm tired already. You see? Inside the shower. What is going on? In the desert, they don't even shower. They only take small water, put their they brush their teeth, and that is it. Because they know that this water is a precious thing. Very precious. But here we waste them because we, especially in Quebec, we have a lot of water. We can waste it and do whatever we want to do, but God is telling us, no, do not waste it. Manage it well. Manage it well. Let this water that you think that you take for granted, if you go to another place, it's a big resources. So simply because it was almost a relatively modern offering, it emphasized the perspective of life that Sukkot was meant to convey. One can be joyous, or one can be joyful even with plain water. If one realizes the blessing of nature and of the benevolence of God in a world of excess and the pursuit of luxury, Sukkot comes to remind us of our true priority and the necessity of a healthy balance in our life and behavior. So in the world that we live in North America, right, life of luxury. You see, in North America, you see a house, mansions, big house. Go to Europe, you see their house, their bedroom, tiny thing. Small thing. Even though go to some other part of the world, small thing. But in North America, no, we are the king of the world. Big mansions, luxury. Oh no, this car just came out today. Which one is that? Oh, Lamborghini. The latest model. Boom, I go buy it because I have the money. Oh yeah, boom, I go buy it. Hey, you see, all these are what? They are nothing. They are what? Absolutely nothing. We ourselves has to understand the reality. It's a facade. Those things they block your face, you cannot see deep. But God wants us to remove them so that we can see far away and understand what is teaching us. That what Sukkah the festival of Sukkot has to convey. And the festival of Sukkot is conveying that this world is temporal. Your staying here on this planet is temporal. My staying here on this planet is temporal. It's not permanent. Our permanent home is the Garden of Eden. And that is where God is leading us to. And that is where we have to and that's our eternal home. That's where we're going to rest forever and for eternity. But for us to reach there, we need to pass through the wilderness of life. We have to pass through the wilderness of this planet. And this planet is dangerous. It has a lot of hole, pit, a lot of danger. It is only God that can guide us through. So that's why God is saying, trust me, believe me, put all your hope in me. I will guide you through. I will lead you back to the Garden of Eden. Hak Sameach Sukkot, Shabbat Shalom.